9. And as we continue along, a question that even made me drop my pen. What impact will Donald Trump's tax plan have on our economy? We will address that question and many others, as I'm pleased to be joined here on the anchor desk by a distinguished former member of the British Parliament and current senior economic consultant with Euro-Pacific Capital, John Browne. John, it is great to have you in studio. We have a couple of things in common. You're a former MP. I'm a former MC, member of Congress. So we always know about economics. What's the old joke? You could take all the economists in the world, lay them end to end, and still never reach a conclusion. That's right. Boom, you got it. One guy who's about to wrap up, we hope, his time in Washington, is President Obama. And as he is heading down the home stretch, less than 6 months in his term, he was out campaigning for Hillary Clinton the other day, patting himself on the back about what he calls an improved American economy. Let's watch the president on the stump.
Let's face it, Republicans don't like to hear good news right now. But it's important just to understand this is a big deal. More Americans are working. More have health insurance, incomes are rising, poverty is falling, and gas is $2 a gallon. Thank you for reminding me. Thanks, Obama.
Well, perhaps the pinnacle of the audacity, I don't know if the audacity of hope or being an incumbent president, playing fast and loose with the facts, but there he was thanking himself. Those numbers from the Census Bureau aren't exactly, well, they can be quibbled about because we're not really seeing the economic growth he was claiming there on the stump.
Yeah, but I mean, despite the largest stimulation in history, the economic growth is between 1% and 2%, roughly a half of what it should be after an economy. And as for Obama to claim oil prices are down, I mean, it's due to him, it's quite ridiculous. And we've got, what, 92 million Americans who are not in work, 48 million Americans on food stamps, which in the old world were soup kitchens. I mean, it's a disgrace, I mean, really what's happening, and it's done through over-taxation, over-regulation, and a lack of a future hope given. It's all socialist stuff. Take from those that have achieved and give it to those who want to do nothing.
And when we look at Mr. Obama's accomplishments, I think the most vexing thing that he does not talk about is the non-participation in our labor force here in the United States at the highest level since the 1970s. And at least in the 70s, when we had economic troubles, there was a sizable manufacturing base in this country. Things have changed, not for the better, and yet there's Mr. Obama out trying to sell his economic snake oil.
Yeah, I quite agree. I mean, it's been a great deterioration. Of course, labor participation in the labor force is because we haven't got a growing economy. Of course, the introduction of the computer and the robot should have increased productivity enormously. In fact, it's dropping. And in fact, it's at almost an all-time low. So really, the thing is very sick and should be worrying for everybody.
There is a new report out today from the Harvard Business School saying that the United States is, quote, failing the test of economic competitiveness. What is your take on American competitiveness globally?
Well, not just because I'm a graduate of the same place, but I don't often agree with Harvard reports, but this one I do. And they recommend, I think it's, I mean, one classic example is the corporate tax rate. I mean, in Britain, the corporate tax rate is 20%. In Ireland, it's 12.5%. In America, it's 35%, the highest in the developed world. And so you get American companies earning money overseas and wanting to keep that money overseas, not bring it back to America and create jobs and new investment, or investment and new jobs, but to keep it overseas, to stop or avoid paying this enormous tax. So Harvard is right. They should deregulate, they should lower the tax rates, and spend money the government should be spending on infrastructure, not on salvaging moribund companies which are failing.
You know what I appreciate? The fact that we could probably put up a historical marker right here on the anchor desk. We're both agreeing with Harvard today. Now perhaps less so with Oxford economics, because they're predicting that Mr. Trump's economic plan would cost the American economy $1 trillion over the next 5 years. Whenever I hear these predictions, they're always based on assumptions that, well, can be a bit specious. Your take on this projection of gloom and doom under the Trump economic plan from Oxford
Well, modern
Economics.
politics is not so much about the truth, but truthiness, which means the feel-good factor. And if you're against Trump, you put up these great things, right, rather like Project Fear by David Cameron in the United Kingdom against Brexit. I mean, he put up the same things, of course, which proved to be nonsense. I mean, where they grab this figure, one thing they accused Donald Trump of not being specific, and then they grab a figure of $1 trillion because it sounds terrifying, and say that it's going to cost the economy. As far as I understand what he's saying, he's going to be neutral. It's going to be economic neutral, his policy. And so basically, and a great deal more freedom. And we saw it under Margaret Thatcher in Britain. The moment she lowered taxes, she increased and lowered regulation, enterprise flourished, and she got in a higher tax take. There was more tax take to the government at the lower rates than there was at the higher rates, because business flourished, employment flourished, and therefore people started paying tax who were on the dole before. And so I think it's, I'm ashamed to say it's Oxford. I don't know whether it's American or British Oxford. They don't know but you're right. I mean, as President Nixon said about Harvard, is the Kremlin on the Charles, and most of it comes out frightfully left-wing. But Oxford, I heard that on the wireless coming here, and I thought it was quite astounding. Alarmist, just to put people off a left-wing Keynesian view.
Yeah, that's right. Always bowing at the altar of Keynes. But I also see something else here. Again, the assumptions made. When I was serving in Washington on the Ways and Means Committee, the Democrats had put in place people projecting what cutting taxes would cost the government in terms of revenue, not in terms of what would happen with economic dynamism, with tax cuts, putting more money out for people to save, spend, and invest, that inevitably expanded the economy. So we replaced what they were doing with what we called reality-based scoring, taking into account that injection of capital through people having more of their own money to save, spend, and invest.
Most interesting what you're saying. The dynamic forecasting and figures take into account human behavior, which the others don't. They say, well, this is exactly what happened in Britain, cut the tax rates, oh, we're going to lose all this income from the government. But because it resulted in enterprise, actually the tax take went up. And that is dynamic.
Only about a minute left, really 45 seconds. Polls are the currency of politics. Right now, according to the newest CBS News New York Times poll, Mrs. Clinton and Donald Trump are dead even. The LA Times tracking poll has Mr. Trump ahead by 6 points. There have been those who've compared this American presidential election to the Brexit referendum in the UK. Do you believe there's something to that?
Yeah, very similar, and the scare tactics, of course, are the same. And you have the establishment, which was David Cameron, and people are sick and tired. And 100 years ago, America was the richest country in the world and by far the most powerful economically after 1945. It's now the largest debtor in the world. And this has been done by the establishment of both the Democrat and Republican parties. And here you've got Clinton, who's pro-establishment. You've got Trump, who's trying to break and give people a voice and govern in favor of the people.
You issued the operative term right there, break. We've got to take one. John Browne, we appreciate your insights. We are coming back in just a minute, our prime playback with General Michael Hayden. That and more as we continue here.